One thing stood out about the Roy Moore case among a few obvious things, and one of the obvious things being that the establishment doesn't want an outsider in, and our president happens to be an outsider, and it shows more and more why they're blocking everything they can block that he's trying to get done, and why not as much is getting done as it would if there were people actually working for that agenda. As I've heard, it's an open secret in Washington that they don't like the America First agenda, and they take anyone from any party over an outsider who's anti-establishment and who won't just go along with the establishment and who will actually work with this agenda of getting things done, of what was promised to get done. And the establishment, the Democrats and Republicans, they're like two dogs on one part of the leash, and they have the same owner. One dog might be bigger than the other, but they're going in the same direction. There's not much difference between the two, and this has showed in the Alabama race even more, when they either have Strange or have Doug, and there's not a whole lot of difference between the two. They just want anybody but more, and that shows, like with this hit piece and everything. It's escalating. They're trying to do anything to prevent him from getting in there, and to try to like show the voters, well, you're not going to have these kind of candidates easily. If you choose them, you're going to have to go through a lot of stress for it, and they're trying to make it not worthwhile for people to run or for people to vote for those kind. And it's shown in this past week. And one thing that also is a bit surprising is some of the people that either withdrew their support or kind of distanced themselves, and some of them I like, so I didn't really expect that, and I hope that they don't cave too much. And that's another thing that was noticeable about this. But the most obvious one was that it shows how desperately America needs a civics lesson. I mean, he's guilty in the court of public opinion over an accusation. That's it. No proof, nothing. And that's scary, how many citizens just go along with that or say it themselves. And it doesn't help that the politicians are saying to step down, the media is saying to step down, and that's obvious because they don't want somebody like that since he's a threat. They're basically scared of him, they're scared of Trump, they're scared of anybody who's not like them. Anybody who's trying to do good for the country does scare them. It scares the elites and Soros and everybody in there who works together on either party. There's not much difference at all between the parties, and so that there's that, and more, it shows that he's become strong when he has to be. Most people didn't know too much about him other than what they've read, and like how he has gotten expelled twice from the courthouse for not taking the 10 Commandments down, and they've read the other things he stands for and such, but otherwise you don't really know somebody. You don't know someone running for a Senate in a state that well, but now it's shown over these past few days that he stands his ground, and I don't think they expected that either, since he's not really been in Washington politics for these past few decades. He's been the judge, and they didn't really know that he would be that strong and stand his ground. They thought, well, they'll get him just to roll over like the other Republicans usually do and give up and compromise, and so they didn't think it'd be this hard really to get him out. And it's been impressive, and a lot of people didn't expect that. And at the same time, a lot of the citizens, they just think that over hearsay, over what somebody said, especially at a time like this when it was a month out until the election, and somebody suddenly came up with something after 40 years, after the Washington Post went down there and offered them $1,000 to do it. and the person worked for the Doug campaign and was a sign language interpreter for the Hillary campaign. It just, if people don't see the hit piece to it, and along with the fact that the establishment doesn't want him in and that the media is real biased, that's just hard to believe. But even if not, you go back to the basic laws that we have in this country, is that everyone's entitled to a trial. They need their day in court. It's innocent until proven guilty, yet he was guilty and told he has to prove his innocence, told he has to step down unless he can prove this. Why should he step down? He's not guilty of anything. What's that about? And that people that go along with that, it's a very dangerous precedent, because that can happen to anybody. Anyone can be accused of anything. And if your average Joe loses his job over some accusations from decades ago, is that really good? Is that good for society? To have him jobless and then on welfare over some accusations and people getting real emotional and excited, saying step down, saying quit, and firing him, kind of like they fired people for being at the Unite the Right rally. They weren't arrested, they didn't do anything wrong, all they did was attend, and some got fired, and that's not right. That's scary. And the same with this. They're going over accusations, baseless accusations. And I mean, if he would have, it could affect the course of this country. Especially he's going into the Senate, where the Senate is what stops this agenda that most people voted for. And I'm sure some of the people that voted for Trump in this agenda have to be some of the ones that are freaked out and saying, oh yeah, you got accused, step down. And they don't look at the big picture of this. It could change like a lot the course of the country over nothing if he would have just stepped down like people were saying. And even the people that aren't calling for him, the ordinary people not calling for him to step down, they'd be okay with that. And we've gotten so far away from the basics in this country, and that doesn't help that the politicians and the media tell him to step down, and then people just kind of go along with what's said and they're okay with it. That doesn't help, but people should know off the bat. I mean, it's dangerous to accuse and take action against somebody based on hearsay, especially something that really isn't credible. I've heard that these stories seem credible. Well, if they mean that somebody made up a story, if you're going to bother to make up a story, you're going to make it sound real. But none of them stood out as being too credible to me. Nothing that I didn't find anything that would that I don't think would warrant all these people freaking out and saying that it would be the best thing for the country to step down and such, especially because today Al Franken, there's pictures of him, there's videos of him. He admitted that he did it, but there's no action taken, there's no call to step down. And this is less than a week after that. Actually, it was 3 days ago when everybody was on the bandwagon about more stepping down. And then now I haven't heard any of the same politicians, Mitch or anybody, saying to step down. Mitch says they'll have an ethics meeting or something. I mean, that nobody's ever gotten expelled, had to step down after having the ethics meeting before. So that's just not going to go anywhere. But yet you tell the candidate that you're afraid of to step down. So that shows their obvious bias of everybody. If just a couple days later somebody that admitted it really said not going to get that same treatment, and Menendez too, the Democrat too, he doesn't hardly get on the news really. But yet this guy over an accusation that the stories, each time one falls apart, they bring out somebody else, and they're saying to step down over this. And it's good that he's as strong as he is. I mean, it's good that he pleasantly surprised people like that when he had to be, or that just that people didn't know, we didn't know. And then now that we see that's how it is, that's a good thing, because it's going to be a long month of the establishment trying to get him out of there. And it doesn't help when the citizens just go along with that, go along with what they hear, because they always hear that an accusation equals guilt. And that's what's real dangerous, and that's what I was even a bit surprised about that they would just automatically say that, okay, well, he's out, and then we'll get somebody a write-in or something, and they're talking about sending Sessions back, but Sessions said he had no interest in going back. He's going to stay up there. He wants to stay as the AG, and he's another one that they're afraid of. That's why they kind of keep his hands tied so that he can't get much done, and then he gets flack for it. But they don't want anybody in there who's really for the good. And he's another one. They want the deputy AG to take over instead and send him back, and then have Moore completely gone. And enough people seem to be okay with that. They don't pay attention. I'm not sure what it is. And that is the thing that's a little disturbing. I know they don't teach history all that well in school anymore, but that's a big part of this country, is having those laws that are fair to everybody. Everybody deserves equal trial. Everybody's innocent till proven guilty. Except now, suddenly, he's not, and he wasn't, even though right at the same time, there's 2 other senators that have done so much worse, actually done, than anything he's been accused of, and that they're not being asked at all by the establishment to step down. I wish people would pay more attention to this, because this can keep going on. If they were able to take him out, which they're not, then of course they try to do that with any other America First candidate from any state that tried to run. And it's just a dangerous precedent if we just believe what we hear and take action based on what we hear. And that's one thing that I would like to say. I hope people learn from this, but I don't think they're going to. But that is one pretty disturbing thing.